The contaminated world Zirai had seen many strange things during her time as a scout for the Thalvaran Defense Force. She had flown over burning cities, walked through crashed ships full of bones, and once saw a moon split in two. But nothing in her life had prepared her for what she saw today. A human, alive, breathing and unmasked, was walking through the poison air of her home planet. Her eyes widened behind the dark lens of her face shield. The gas filters hissed quietly, feeding her clean air. Around her, the rest of the scout unit froze in place, their weapons lowered in confusion. The human stepped calmly through the red mist. He wore no helmet, no mask, no protection at all. Just a simple black jacket and dusty pants. He looked like he was out for a walk in the park. "Wait, you don't need a mask?" Zirai said out loud, her voice cracking. It was more a whisper to herself than a question to him. But he heard her. The human stopped and slowly turned. His eyes met hers. They were clear and sharp. No signs of sickness or madness. His face was tanned, his short beard rough but neat. He looked completely healthy. "I'm fine," he said, his voice calm. "I don't need one." Zirai blinked hard. She glanced at the toxic level display on her wrist. The air here was full of chemical spores and acid gas, enough to kill a Thalvaran in 2 minutes. And humans? They were supposed to last only seconds. But this man, this thing, stood there like it was nothing. She looked to her commander, Vectol, who was standing just behind her. His tall armored form shifted uneasily. "This must be a trick," he growled. "Some kind of suit under his skin, or a drone in disguise." But Zirai shook her head. "No, he's real." The wind picked up slightly, pushing the red mist across the cracked ground. In the distance, broken towers reached for the sky like fingers from a buried corpse. This part of the planet, once a great city, was now a silent graveyard. The war had left it cursed. No life could grow here. No one dared return. And yet, here he was. The human walked forward again, slowly and without fear. Zirai stepped back, unsure if she should aim her rifle or just watch. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice raised now. "Looking," he said, "for answers." Zirai's mouth tightened. "You should be dead." "Maybe," the human replied. "But I'm not." She stared at him. The other soldiers whispered behind her. Some were afraid, others angry, all of them confused. The human kept walking past them, heading toward the ruins ahead. "Should we stop him?" one of the younger scouts asked. Zirai hesitated. If this was a trick, he could be a threat. But if it wasn't, "Follow him," she ordered. "But don't engage." The squad moved like shadows, keeping a safe distance. Zirai stayed near the front, her eyes never leaving the stranger. He moved with purpose, like he knew where he was going. He passed twisted metal, shattered glass, and fallen statues of forgotten leaders. He stepped over broken cables and dried-up fountains. He didn't even cough once. How can he breathe this air? Zirai whispered. "Maybe he's not human," Vectol said. "No," Zirai said softly. "He is. I've seen humans before. I've studied them. This one, he's real." They followed him deeper into the ruins, their suits hissing softly in the silence. Above them, the sun shone weakly through the thick clouds, casting a rusty light on the ground. Suddenly, the human stopped. He turned slightly and spoke, as if he knew they were there all along. "You don't need the masks either," he said. Zirai froze. "That's a lie." "It's not," he said, pointing to the buildings around them. "This place, it was never truly poisoned. The war made everyone believe it was. But the air is clean now. It has been for a long time." "Impossible," Vectol barked. The human shrugged. "Then why am I still alive?" No one answered. Zirai stared at him. Her fingers trembled. Could he be telling the truth? Could everything she knew about her planet be wrong? "Who are you?" she asked. The man looked up at the cracked sky, then back at her. "Sergeant Elias Ward, Earth Union Marines, retired." He smiled faintly. and I'm here to wake up a dead world. Flashback to the mission. Briefing before he stepped onto the poisoned world. Before the red skies and ancient ruins, Sergeant Elias Ward had stood alone in a cold steel room many light years away. The lights were dim. The table in front of him was bare except for a single thin tablet. Across from him sat 3 officers in quiet judgment, 2 from Earth's military, 1 from the Galactic Union. Their faces were tight with concern, their eyes tired from secrets they couldn't speak. Out loud. "This isn't a rescue," the lead officer said. "It's a recon op. You understand what that means?" Elias didn't flinch. "I walk in, I don't come back." "No one has come back," the woman said, voice hollow. "We sent drones. They failed. We sent a team of 6 Union scouts. No signal, no bodies, just gone." Elias picked up the tablet and flipped through the mission file. Planet Thalvora, once home to over 1 billion sentient beings, turned to ash during the final year of the War of Silence. Atmosphere compromised by bioweapons. Wildlife extinct. Surface unfit for life. Union quarantine locked the planet down a century ago. No entry, no survivors, no hope. But something had changed. A signal had been received. Faint, buried under layers of static, but it carried a name. Elias Ward. That name wasn't from any database. No Union probe could have guessed it. The message simply said, "He can walk the dust. You're the only human with confirmed contact lineage to Thalvora's last defensive unit," said the officer from the Union. He was tall, pale, and barely moved as he spoke. "DNA markers, ancestral threads. It may be superstition, but as we believe you have some kind of inherited resistance, something encoded, hidden." Elias said nothing. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in lies, and the Union was full of them. "Why now?" he asked. "Why me? After 100 years, why send someone in?" The officers looked at one another, and that silence told him everything. Someone knew something. They weren't sending him to learn. They were sending him to confirm. "We need eyes inside," the woman said. "And we need someone the Union won't miss." That was honest. Elias respected that. He signed the order with a flick of his finger. The last line of the contract was, blunt, voluntary insertion, no extraction guaranteed. He was used to that. The ship they gave him was old. Too old, really. It creaked in the void like it remembered wars it wasn't supposed to survive. No pilot, no crew. Just Elias and the ship's AI, which barely functioned. It didn't speak to him except for landing instructions. As he drifted toward Thalvora, Elias stared at the glowing surface through the cracked window. The clouds churned like boiling blood. The cities were just shapes now, hollow bones of towers and domes. There was no green, no blue, no wind, just silence. He remembered the old records. Thalvora had once been rich in life, full of art and knowledge. Its people weren't warriors, they were thinkers, builders. But war came for them anyway, just like it came for Earth and every other world too slow to raise a shield. Elias remembered the stories his grandfather told about a hidden alliance, a rebel signal, a weapon that could change air itself. A weapon that didn't kill, but rewrote what breathable meant. It was madness. But madness had a way of coming true in the dark. He landed on the edge of a broken city. No ceremony, no welcoming committee. Just ash. He opened the hatch, stepped out, and breathed. For a moment, the world held its breath too. He felt it all. The air was sharp, dry, but not toxic. It tasted metallic, yes, but not deadly. Not to him. He had expected pain. Fire in his lungs. Death in his blood. But nothing happened. He smiled. Something inside him whispered, "You belong here." Back in the ruins, the alien girl with the glowing eyes still stared at him. He saw the fear in her face, the doubt, the need to believe he was lying, because if he wasn't lying, then everything she had been told was false. He kept walking, but the weight of the past followed. Because this wasn't just about one planet. This was about a lie old enough to become truth. and a man just foolish enough to tear the lie open. And what came after? That was the part no one wanted to think about. The alien team shadows him. They followed him through the fog like ghosts chasing a man who had already died and refused to admit it. Z-Ray kept her breathing slow and shallow, though her filter mask made it hard to feel the air at all. Every step forward into the red-tinged ruins filled her with tension. Sergeant Elias Ward, this impossible human, this unmasked wanderer, walked ahead at a steady pace, hands relaxed, eyes scanning the remains of her people's past like he'd been there before. He moved not like a stranger to the world, but like someone returning to a place he'd never stopped dreaming about. The rest of Z-Ray's squad moved in staggered formation behind her, silent and watchful. Fectol, the commander, grumbled through his comms link every few minutes, questioning the mission, questioning the human, questioning the point of all of this. But even his anger was mixed with unease. None of them had ever walked this far, into the ash zone, and lived. Their suits were only rated for 20 minutes of exposure. And yet, they were following someone who walked it bare-skinned. It was like watching a storybook character come to life, something you were told to fear as a child suddenly becoming real, but not in the way you expected. Not evil, not good, just real, unexplainable. "What do you see?" Z-Ray whispered into her mic, eyes locked on the human's back. "No weapons," replied one scout. "No readings from his body, just normal. Breathing is stable, no signs of mutation, no implants, he's just walking." Bechtol's voice cut in, sharp. "People don't just walk through bioweapon clouds. This isn't a stroll through the gardens of Malketh. He should be dead." "Then maybe we're wrong about the air," Z-Ray murmured, almost afraid to say it aloud. Silence answered her. They passed the ruins of a once great bridge, its supports melted into the riverbed long ago by chemical rains. Now, only stumps of corroded metal jutted from the stone, sharp and accusing. Old banners still clung to the railings, burned, faded cloth with the emblem of the Thalvaran flame. Z-Ray's grandmother used to speak of that symbol with pride. The human paused at one such flag. He ran his fingers over it, brushing off ash and dust like a man greeting an old friend. Then he spoke again. "I used to see this in the dreams," he said quietly, more to himself than to anyone listening. Didn't know it was real until. Now Z-Ray's skin crawled beneath her armor. Dreams? He dreamed of this place. Before today, no human had even stood on Thalvora since the final orbital strike 102 years ago. Elias stepped forward into what used to be a plaza. At least, that's what the city maps suggested. Now it was more like a crater, of bones and metal. Fountains were shattered. Statues lay in broken pieces. The center had once held a pillar of flame carved from living stone. It was gone now, just a scorched base and burned-out torch. He stopped at the edge of it, closed his eyes and breathed deeply. Z-Ray instinctively checked her filter. She had been doing it non-stop since they entered the zone. She couldn't help it every time the human inhaled like that, like it was a gift. It terrified her. "I think he knows where he's going," said one of the younger scouts behind her. "Look at him. He's tracking something, like he's been here before." "Hasn't," Z-Ray said flatly. "No human has. Not unless someone lied. Maybe someone did." The scout muttered. Z-Ray didn't respond, but she was thinking the same thing. They followed Elias as he turned toward a half-collapsed structure in the distance. Its roof had caved in, and the outer walls were covered in dark growths, fungus that only fed on dead metal. This was the Hall of Echoes, once a gathering place for scholars and memory keepers. Z-Ray had studied it in history class. According to records, it was the last place the rebel leaders were seen alive before the Union silenced the resistance in one final strike. But Elias walked toward it like it called to him. When he reached the edge of the entrance, he stopped again. Then, without turning, he spoke aloud. "You don't need to hide. I know you're following me." Z-Ray froze. The entire squad went still. Elias turned halfway and looked directly into the fog where they were crouched. "I'm not here to fight you," he said, "but you should know this world isn't what you were told it was. He pointed to the shattered sky above. It's not dead. It's been waiting. Zirai stepped forward slowly, lowering her rifle just a little. She had so many questions, but only one rose to her lips. What are you looking for? He smiled, just a hint, tired and sad. A memory. Maybe a truth. He turned back toward the dark building and stepped inside, leaving a trail of footprints in the dust. Zirai hesitated. Then, slowly, she followed. Inside the forbidden dome, the Hall of Echoes had not heard a voice in 100 years. Its walls, once polished stone etched with light-reactive runes, were now faded and cracked. Moss-like growths clung to the edges of the shattered ceiling where sunlight used to stream through crystalline panels. Time had taken everything. The color, the warmth, the people. And yet, when Elias Ward stepped inside, the air seemed to shift, as if the building remembered him. Zirai entered behind him, breath catching slightly as her boots crossed the threshold. Her visor flickered in warning. The radiation was spiking. Her suit's filtration systems hissed louder, overcompensating to protect her. But Elias didn't even pause. He just walked further into the dark. The building felt alive, but not in a comforting way. It was the kind of silence that presses in on you, a silence so dense, it makes you feel like a trespasser in your own memory. The hall had once been a place where stories were spoken aloud, where knowledge was passed from voice to voice. Now, even those voices had rotted away. And still, Elias walked with purpose. His fingers brushed across the broken walls as if reading a language no one else could see. He stopped at an old mural, barely recognizable through the grime, but he stared at it like it meant everything. Zirai came closer, cautiously, and looked at it too. She saw what remained of a carved relief. Thalvoran scholars gathered around a burning sigil, holding hands, breathing deeply as golden threads of air curled around them. Beneath it, in her native script, the words read, "Breath is memory, breath is truth." "Do you know what this is?" Elias asked softly, without turning to her. "It's just mythology," Zirai replied. But the words felt hollow in her mouth. He looked at her then, really looked. "Is it?" There was something in his eyes that unsettled her. Not danger, not madness. Something worse. Certainty. She glanced at her environmental scanner again. It still claimed the air was toxic, filled with airborne acids and dormant pathogens. According to her readings, she should already be halfway to organ failure, but she felt fine. Better than fine. She realized with a jolt that she had turned down her suit's airflow to conserve power and hadn't noticed for the last 5 minutes. That meant she'd been breathing in trace amounts of the outside air. She wasn't coughing. She wasn't faint. She wasn't dead. "You lied," she whispered, the accusation weak even as it left her lips. "No," Elias said, his voice firm. "I never said the air was clean. I said you didn't need the mask." Zirai backed away slightly, heart racing. "That doesn't make sense. We've lost people out here, whole survey teams. They died in minutes." "Not from the air," he replied. "From fear, from panic, from what they believed would happen." Io turned and walked deeper into the ruins toward a staircase that spiraled downward into the dome's inner chamber. Zirai followed, unwilling, uncertain, but drawn in just the same. The rest of her team held position at the entrance, unwilling to cross that unseen line between myth and reality. As they descended into the lower chamber, the light dimmed. Old emergency lanterns still blinked faintly along the walls, powered by some ancient energy cell. The deeper they went, the more Elias changed. His movements became more focused, like the building itself was guiding him. At the base of the staircase stood a sealed doorway. Thick, reinforced, no external controls. Zirai tilted her head. "That's a vault door. These things haven't opened in a century." Elias stepped forward, reached into his jacket, and pulled out something small and metallic, a thin coin-sized disc with strange grooves etched on its face. He pressed it into a hidden slot beside the door. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then came a sound Zirai had never heard before. The hall exhaling. The vault door slid open with a deep, aching groan, revealing a room that had been untouched since the final day of the Thalvoran resistance. Inside were old consoles, sealed stasis chambers, and in the center, a pedestal covered in dust. Elias walked toward it reverently. "This is what the Union didn't want you to see," he said. "They didn't erase this world because it was dangerous. They erased it because it was proof." Zirai stepped beside him, heart pounding. "Proof of what?" she asked. He brushed the dust away from the pedestal, revealing an object beneath a sheet of ancient glass, a breathing mask. Sleek, elegant, not human, and next to it, on a plaque, her breath caught as she read the words aloud. "For the humans, who walk the dust may they remember, we shared the air once." Zirai stared at Elias, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've been here before?" He nodded. "Not me, but someone like me." The hall had remembered his blood. The truth behind the bio-war. The pedestal stood in silence between them, and the mask resting atop it seemed almost holy. It was delicate, unlike the bulky life support units Zirai's people wore now. Made of smooth crystal alloy, shaped to fit around a face not unlike hers, not unlike his. It wasn't a mask made for war. It was a relic from a time when people still believed they could breathe together. Zirai stared at the inscription again. The Thalvaran script, untouched by wind or time, gleamed faintly under the low light. "We shared the air once." Elias said nothing at first. He simply stood there with his hand resting on the pedestal, like a man at a grave who had long run out of words. His expression was unreadable. Not grief, not joy. Something heavier, older, like memory itself had taken root in his chest. Zirai found her voice at last. "This doesn't make sense. Why would this be here? Why would we build a vault to store a mask designed for a human face? Thalvora wasn't even in contact with Earth before the war." Elias finally looked at her. "That's what they told you." He turned from the pedestal and walked over to a console half buried in rubble. The interface was dead, dust-covered, but Elias wiped it clean with the care of someone tending to an old wound. He pulled a small device from his pocket, older than any Union tech Zirai recognized, and connected it to the console's cracked data port. Static lit the screen. Then a voice, female, strong but tired, cut through the decades of silence. "This is Highkeeper Lanari of the Flame Archive. Final entry, 3rd cycle, day 406. If this message is heard, then the locks have been opened, and someone still breathes the dust." Zirai took a step back. The sound of her own language spoken in that voice, clear and alive, felt like being touched by a ghost. Elias didn't flinch. Lanari's voice continued. "They came to us with peace. Earth's envoys. Their world was dying, but their minds were brilliant. They taught us things about breath, about the memory of air. We shared what we had. For a time, we were not Thalvoran or human. We were both learning, surviving. But the Union feared what we were building together. They called it unnatural, dangerous. So they burned the bridge." Zirai's heart thudded in her ears. The recording crackled, but the message kept flowing, raw, unscripted, defiant. "They bombed our atmosphere processors, blamed it on sabotage, told the galaxy Talavora had unleashed a weapon too dangerous to contain. But it wasn't a weapon. It was a cure. A living atmosphere designed to evolve with us. With them. We made it for everyone." The console hissed and fell silent. The room felt heavier than it had moments before. The walls, once forgotten stone, now bore witness to a truth buried beneath a century of official lies. Elias looked at Zirai again, and this time there was no mask between them. Just two people breathing the same air, standing on the same floor their ancestors had once walked together. "You think I'm immune?" Elias said quietly. "But it's not immunity. It's inheritance. My great-grandfather, he was part of the project, the ones who helped build the hybrid air. It was passed down, coded into our blood. A gift no one remembers giving. Zirei tried to form words, but her throat felt dry. Her scanner had stopped beeping. She looked down. No radiation warnings. No biotoxin alerts. Nothing. She pulled off her helmet. The filtered air rushed out with a soft hiss. She stood in the open air of Thalvora, bare-faced for the first time in her life. And she breathed. It was warm. Dusty. But not deadly. She staggered slightly, overwhelmed not by toxins, but by the terrifying realization that she had been lied to since birth, the war, the gas, the idea that this planet was cursed, that her ancestors had lost. No, they hadn't lost. They had been erased. Why would they do this? She whispered. Why destroy all of it? Why silence the truth? Elias didn't answer right away. Then he said, because if the galaxy, new humans and Thalvorans could survive together, thrive together, they'd ask what else the Union lied about, and fear. Fear is the only weapon they trust. Zirei's legs gave out and she sat on the dusty floor, not out of weakness, but from the sheer weight of it all. The world wasn't dead. Her people hadn't failed. The truth had simply been buried. And now it was starting to breathe again. The Union's shadow, the moment the truth was spoken aloud. Something in the air changed, not in the wind, but in the weight of it, as if the planet itself had been holding its breath for over a century and was only now beginning to exhale. But freedom, even the hint of it, never goes unnoticed. Far above the broken dome, orbiting in silence like a predator, the Union vessel USS Clarity came to life. Inside, the command crew stood in silence as the automated alert pulsed across. The deck, unauthorized access detected, Echo Site Vault 09A, atmospheric data link breached. The Admiral, gray-skinned and cybernetically enhanced, didn't speak for a long moment. His single organic eye narrowed as he read the words over and over again, not because he didn't understand them, but because he did. All too well. Patch into ground surveillance, he ordered, voice cold as steel under snow. I want visuals. Live feed. Now. Within seconds, a shaky drone feed flickered onto the central display. The image sharpened slowly. A ruined dome. A human man, and worse, a Thalvoran woman without a helmet breathing. Alive. The Admiral clenched his jaw. Deploy the Valkyrie protocol. Full erasure. No survivors. On the surface, the air shimmered as a sudden pressure change rolled across the city. Ruins. Zirei felt it before she heard it. A subtle vibration in the bones of the dome, like the sound of something ancient waking up hungry. She looked at Elias and he was already moving. He had that look in his eye again. Not fear, but preparation. Like he'd been waiting for this moment since the day he signed that mission order. They're coming, he said simply. How fast? He didn't need to answer. Outside, above the broken skyline, the first dropship split the sky like falling knives. Sleek, silver vessels with Union emblems burned into their flanks. Each one bristled with weapons. They were not built to negotiate. They were built to erase. Zirei's comms crackled to life. Vectol's voice burst through the channel, harsh, panicked. Hostile Union forces inbound, automated systems locked us out. They're jamming us. Zirei, pull back, now. But Zirei didn't move. She stood by the pedestal, the breathing, mask still gleaming under the dust, her mind whirling. They knew this place was here. She muttered. They left it buried, not destroyed. Because if they'd destroyed it, someone might have asked why. Elias knelt beside one of the consoles, tapping furiously. They didn't destroy it because they needed it. The tech here, the breathable atmosphere formulas. It's priceless. They've been trying to replicate it for years, keeping it classified. Out of reach. Zirei stared at him. And now we've exposed it. Elias nodded. And now they'll do what they always do. Silence. Outside the dome, the Union strike team hit the ground in formation. 12 soldiers in burned black armor, faces hidden behind mirrored masks. No words, no hesitation. Their orders were simple: clean the site, leave no record, leave no witnesses. Tat, leader of the strike team, approached the dome's entryway, scanning for signs of life. A faint reading flared. 2 life forms inside, 1 human, 1 Thalvaran. He raised his fist. The squad fanned out. Inside, Elias tapped a final command into the console. A soft tone echoed from the pedestal. "What did you do?" Zairai asked. "I sent the data." "To who?" "Everyone." A slow grin crossed his face, grim and resolute. "That vault contained the original design, proof of Earth-Thalvora hybrid tech. I just uploaded it to every civilian satellite on the network. In about 6 minutes, every colony, every ship, every broadcast relay in the outer sectors is going to see the truth." Zirai's breath caught. "They'll kill us." "I know," Elias said. "But they can't kill the truth once it's breathing again." A flash of light filled the dome as a Union explosive detonated at the entrance, blowing open the outer hall. Dust and fire rushed in. Zairai ducked, drawing her sidearm. "We can't hold them off." "We're not supposed to," Elias said. He reached behind the pedestal and pulled free a small metallic sphere. "This is a decoy core, a trace bounce relay. Makes it look like the data upload originated from here." "And the real signal?" He tapped his chest. "Already bouncing through old Thalvaran comm towers underground. Can't be stopped now." She looked at him differently then. Not as an enemy, not as a relic of a forgotten war, but as a fuse that had just been lit. The soldiers breached the chamber. Shots rang out. Zirai and Elias dove for cover as the past and present crashed together in a hail of plasma fire. He tossed her a second weapon, something old and heavy. "Time to make some noise," he said. Above them, in the Union ship, alarms began to scream. Someone had traced the signal. 1,000 screens lit up across 100 worlds. The truth had left the dome. A new alliance smoke clung to the shattered air like a veil over a wounded god. The Hall of Echoes, once a sacred library of unity and memory, now lay in ruin once again. Scorched walls, cratered floor, burned history. The Union strike team was gone, most of them dead, a few scattered and fleeing after Elias rerouted the internal defenses of the dome. The hall had protected itself, for the first and final time. Zairai limped beside Elias through a half-collapsed corridor, her armor singed, and her voice hoarse. Blood stained the edge of her lips, though she didn't know whether it was hers or someone else's. She had never killed a Union soldier before today. Now she couldn't even count how many. But it wasn't vengeance that kept her moving. It was breath. They emerged into the outside air once more, sunlight breaking weakly through the red clouds above. The mist had cleared, thinner now, as if the planet itself was waking from a long, suffocating dream. Ruins stretched out before them, not as tombs, but as monuments to survival. Elias paused and took in the view. His shoulders were heavy with exhaustion, but his eyes burned bright. "They won't stop coming," Zairai said quietly. "The Union will never forgive this." "They don't need to," Elias replied. "They only need to fail at stopping it." And they would. Somewhere in orbit, thousands of data streams were already flooding comms networks, civilian and private alike. News hubs were being overwhelmed. Encrypted forums were lighting up. Refugee fleets, rebel colonies, black market traders, everyone who had ever feared the Union was now reading about Thalvora, not a dead world, not a cursed one, but a silenced one, and a human walked its dust. The message was loud and clear. Zairai knelt in the soil, unmasked, and placed her hand against the cracked stone beneath her. It pulsed faintly, not with power, but with potential. The legacy of her people wasn't gone. It had just been buried beneath someone else's truth. "I don't know what happens now," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but in the open air it carried far. Elias crouched beside her. "Now we rebuild." She looked at him, doubtful. "You think we can?" He didn't smile this time. His answer was serious, solid, grounded. "Not All at once. Not with peace treaties and parades, but the lie is broken. People will ask questions. Others will come, Thalvarans, humans, hybrids, outcasts. They'll want to know what was lost, what was hidden, and we'll show them. Zaire nodded slowly. She didn't trust hope, not yet, but she believed in momentum. The truth had weight now, and weight had its own gravity. A faint chime sounded in Elias's gear, an old, forgotten Union distress beacon now repurposed to scramble signal patterns. It meant a dropship was near, not a Union ship, a rogue craft. Likely someone who'd picked up the transmission and wanted to help, or at least to profit from the chaos. They would take it, a ride out, a new place to plan, to build. Zaire rose, to her feet, shaky but determined. She glanced at Elias, then back at the broken skyline. "You said you were looking for a memory," she said. He nodded. "And I found it." "What was it?" Elias reached into his jacket and pulled out a tiny worn metal chip, no larger than a thumbnail. He held it up to the light. Inside the casing was a glowing spiral of bio-coded data, dancing like a strand of DNA. "This," he said, "is the original formula, the living air, the first design that let Thalvarans and humans breathe side by side. It's not just an artifact. It's the key to making sure this never happens again." She stared at it like it was sacred. "That's not just a cure." "No," Elias agreed. "It's a beginning." A roar split the sky as the rogue dropship descended, kicking up dust around the plaza. The hatch opened before it even touched down fully. A figure leaned out, masked, unfamiliar, armed. "You, Elias Ward?" The voice called through static. Elias glanced at Zaire. "Depends on who's asking." The figure laughed. "Someone who just watched your broadcast while drinking out of a stolen Union mug. Get in. You've made a lot of enemies today. And a few dangerous friends." He looked to Zaire. "You coming?" She didn't hesitate. They boarded together, shoulder to shoulder, as the doors hissed shut behind them and the ship lifted into the polluted skies of a waking world. Above the clouds, the Union scrambled. Below them, the air moved, and across the galaxy, for the first time in 100 years, people were breathing a new story, not one of fear, but of fire and dust and truth, HFY.